Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for joining me for my weekly guitar blog. It's September 22nd, 2013, and this week we're going to discuss how to work on soloing over unique chord types. Now, this question was sent in from Dino. He's in Watford, England, and he wrote in with this email. Just want to begin by saying thanks for all of the great info you've created on the topic of modes. My question has to do with chords that show up in songs which don't make sense. For example, if a song was in the key of D major and the chord of A minor was used, what scales can I play? Hope this question isn't too complicated with a zillion options. Thanks in advance from Dino in Watford, England, UK. Well, hey, thanks for writing in, Dino. Anytime that a harmonic idea, such as the one that you gave in your question, might perhaps appear inside of a chord progression that you'll need to solo on, it's really important to fully understand as much as possible on the topic of chord harmony. See, chord harmony, as it relates to our scales, acts as the foundation by which we compare and judge any possible notes and therefore scales that we'll decide to use when we go ahead and begin improvising. So the better your knowledge is for modes, chord harmony, and general music theory, the better you will be at selecting a scale for playing over any chord that seems out of place in a progression. So speaking of chord progressions, I've created one especially for this lesson plan to use as our working example. So let's have a look at that next.
Well, let's begin by going through a set of chords that I've put together in a chord progression that we're going to use for some analysis and some discussion for soloing over top of unique chord types. Now, first of all, this chord progression does happen to be in the key of D major. And what I've done is I've harmonized the key into a series of chords. So you can see here's all the harmonized proper diatonic chords for the key of D major done up as 7th chord harmony. And let's just head directly to the progression, and starting at the top here, I want to analyze the whole progression. So starting at the beginning, obviously this D major 7 chord is the 1 chord of the key. So starting on the tonic, we move next in bar 2 to this A minor 7. Now here, this is kind of unique. It's an interesting situation that's happening. Now, in the key, it should be A dominant 7th, as you can tell here. Unfortunately, in the chord progression, we don't really have that. It is the 5th chord of the key. However, the quality is incorrect. Now, the quality should be dominant 7th. However, here we have it as minor 7. So in a sense, it's kind of outside of the realms of what's supposed to be there in the proper sense. It's a 5 minor color, and there are a number of ways that we could obviously cover this chord. Now, let's just start with the most common, which would probably be playing over top of it directly with a mode. Now, on non-functioning minor chords, generally what we do is we play over those situations using the Dorian scale. In this case, of course, we'd use a Dorian mode. That would cover this chord showing up here very nicely. Another method is when you do have a 5 minor chord showing up in a major key, what you can do is off of the root, and of course our root is D, we can just go into D mixolydian when that 5 minor chord occurs. Now the thing is A Dorian and D mixolydian are really just the same scale. So you sort of pick your poison there. You decide what you want to play, and really it's the same notes. Now what you could do, however, that's going to give you a different note jammed into the mix, is you can go into treating this entirely as modal interchange, which would mean on the D major chord, you would play D major scale, and then you would treat the appearance of the A minor 7 chord as a 5 minor chord borrowed from the key of D minor. And that would mean that you could play D minor scale over top of this A minor 7. And you're probably wondering, well, what's the difference between that breakdown of either D mixolydian or A Dorian compared to using D natural minor? Well, the difference would be the note of F. we would have a F sharp if we were dealing with D mixolydian or A Dorian mode. However, if we were dealing with D natural minor, we would wind up with an F natural. So it's going to be a little bit more unique color over top of that chord, and you're going to get a chance to hear what that sounds like, because I did create a melody for this set of chord changes, and I'm going to demonstrate that later on. And I did decide to go with D natural minor so that the A minor chord is really highlighted nicely. So let's carry on. In the next measure, we're heading into our first ending, and we just have a diatonic chord here of G major 7. That happens to be the 4th chord of the key of D major, so really nothing too drastic or different happening there. It's just a 4 chord of the key. And then we move into the last measure of that second ending, which is just a dominant chord. So that's just going to be the typical 5 chord of this key. Now, it is an A dominant 13th. I want to mention that extensions generally really don't do anything to mess around with qualities of the chord. Of course, it's still a dominant chord. The 13th just happens to be an F sharp. That's in the key already, so we're pretty safe there. It's just consider these extended chords as sort of a different shade of the same color, but we're definitely diatonic with that. Now, when we go back to the top, do the changes of the D major and A minor. Again, we're heading into the second ending on the second pass, and this B minor chord is really no big deal. It's just a 6 chord. If I can draw the 6 here, I'm having some trouble drawing, but oh well. It's a 6 chord. Now, after that, we move into our final measure here, where we do have something quite unique showing up. Now, what's happening here is the F sharp is a dominant quality, whereas in this key, the F sharp should be a minor 7 quality. Now, the root of the chord is okay, F sharp, everything's cool there. It's the quality of the chord that's out of sync here. So it's gone unique on us. Now, this situation is a concept that's called secondary dominance, and really what they do is they help another diatonic chord show up in a more dramatic way. Now, in this case, this would be called a non-functioning secondary dominant chord, because from this first section of the tune, when we do head over to the second section, the first chord we have is this G major 7. Now, that's going to sound nice because we're by way of a half step out. However, if it was functioning, it would have to go 5-1 as a resolution, and it obviously doesn't do that. So secondary dominant chord applications, what we do to cover those situations there is we use mixolydian, because of course we are dealing with a dominant chord, or another option is just major pentatonic. That's a nice sound as well. Take note that on the third beat of this measure, we do have the altered sharp 5 showing up on that F sharp dominant 7th chord. Now, it's not really a big deal because the sharp 5 is just a D anyway, and that's totally cool for the key center, so we're not too worried about that. Now, when we move over to the next section, there's nothing really too crazy going on here. It's all completely diatonic. There's no unique chords really showing up. The G is obviously the 4 chord. The E minor 7 showing up here is just a 2 chord, so you can just keep playing your D major key center, although if it's cool with you, you might want to go into using G as Lydian mode, but it's totally up to you if you want to view it that way. It's all pretty diatonic here. We do resolve in the end anyway. You're on a D major for the wrap up on this whole line. Only thing that's different happening there is we have this extension, and like I said before, extensions really don't do anything to mess with the quality. It's just like a different shade of the same color, as I mentioned earlier. So there's the whole breakdown and everything that's happening with this chord progression that I came up with here for the lesson. So next, let's head to the guitar and give you a chance to start hearing these changes go by, as well as the melody that I created for this set of chord changes as well. So let's head to the guitar and check that out next.
In the first section of music of my original piece here, we move through the tonal center chord of D major in the first measure, and then we go to A minor 7 in the second bar. We which is functioning as a 5 minor chord, which obviously is out of the key center. And then in the third bar, we're dealing with our diatonic 4 chord. That's just the G major 7, which will move back to A dominant sound to wrap up into the first ending. So let me play through the chord changes and give you a good idea what this first chunk of chord harmony sounds like. Here we go. Now, the only chord that's outside of the key in that line is A minor 7, and it can be covered in several ways. Let's talk about some of those. Now, first of all, you can include A Dorian as maybe one of your first go-to scales, because that's kind of a direct drop right on the root of that chord there and locks you down real nice on it. Now, if you wanted to prefer the idea of staying with the root of D to stick with the scale, of course, that being a 5 minor chord, it fits into the chord theory of using mixolydian off that root of D. So you could play D major scale or Ionian mode on that first chord. And then when the A minor 7 shows up, you can use D mixolydian. The only thing is, D mixolydian and A Dorian are really the same notes. They both come from the G major scale. So regardless, they're both really the same scale at heart. Now, the other option, though, to fly off in a different direction is to apply modal interchange, that perspective. And, if you do that, you're going to be playing D natural minor. So because the A minor 7 chord can be viewed as the 5th chord running in the parallel D minor harmony, we can get away with that idea of treating the A minor chord as though it were just simply borrowed from the 5th degree of a D natural minor, and you can play D natural minor over that. Now, the thing is between how we would view this, let's say if we were doing it, let's say A Dorian as opposed to D natural minor, the difference between those scales is either having of F natural note or F sharp note. So A Dorian will have the F sharp, and the D natural minor will have an F natural. So it depends on what you like the sound of. In the melody that I composed, I decided to make that A minor 7 chord stand out a lot more and go with that F natural tone on it. So I went with the application of modal interchange using the D natural minor scale. So let me just play through the melody now so you get a good idea how this works. So you can tell, that's a really unique sound with that F natural when that A minor chord shows up. But let's keep going here. Now, in the next line of music, I'm going to begin with that last bar of our first ending, which is an A dominant 13th applied there at the last bar of first ending. And it takes the section back to the top, obviously. Now, we've heard that line, so let's start back at the beginning and play through the changes again into the second ending. See, the second ending gives us two new chords here. We wind up with one that's in key, and that's going to be the B minor 7. It's the 6th chord of the key of D major. But that last chord of the section, that F sharp dominant, it's dominant 7th 3 chord, making it an application of secondary dominant as a situation for us. Now, let me play through these changes, and then we'll talk about this further. Here we go. Now, in these cases, when we have secondary dominant chords, we can cover this sound by using the mixolydian mode, or even perhaps major pentatonic. But here in my composition, I decided to go with mixolydian mode. And the F sharp mixolydian scale is the one I'm using. But the thing is it doesn't contain, the sharp 5 of that altered chord. When that F sharp dominant 7th sharp 5 with the altered chord tone comes in, it's kind of outside. So the note that's the sharp 5, winds up being a D natural. So what I did was I just did something a lot of players will do when they experience a note that pops out of sync with the scale that they're using at the moment. I just, for this line, because the chord kind of stomps at the end of that progression, I just ended on it. So I'm going to play through the melody line in its entirety now. I'm going to use both first ending and second ending from the top and give you the whole rundown of what this entire first section melody sounds like. Here we go. There's that D note coming into that F sharp dominant 7th with the augmented 5th. Now, let's go to the next section here. In regard to the next section, we're just going to be operating inside of the key for this entire part. And the scale for the melody line will, of course, just stick directly within D major scale itself. So, nothing crazy going on here. But first of all, let's just hear what the chord changes sound like. They go like this. So now let's check out this D major scale melody line that I came up for this particular part. Here goes. All right, so I think the next thing that we should do is I did put together a full jam track progression of all these chord changes. So let's go ahead and hear how this entire melody line from top to bottom operates over both sections of the piece with the background harmonies included as well. So let's do that next. Well, unfortunately, it's all too often that I meet with new students who hold a belief that modes are all just the same scale and have no individual relevance. And the idea seems to center around that there's no point in learning theory for how any particular mode works, since modes are just derivatives of the basic major scale anyway. But as you've seen in these examples, using different modes and especially understanding the theory of every mode will end up offering us different note choices. And if you do not understand the underlying theory, those note choices simply won't be available to you. So I really hope you can dig in and study every mode and each of their unique sounds. The payoff is well worth all the effort. Anyway, that's about all the time I have for today. As always, thanks for watching. Have yourself a great week, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye for now.